Good Boundaries and Goodbyes, by Lysa TerKeurst. Introduction. There are moments in life that arrive without an invitation. They don't knock politely. They simply shatter the front door, leaving you standing in the wreckage, trying to remember what silence used to feel like. One of the most difficult of these moments is when you have to speak a truth that feels like a betrayal. A truth you've written in your journal 100 times, a truth you've screamed into your pillow, but a truth that has never once passed your lips. For one woman, that truth was 9 simple words. 9 words that would signal the end of a world she had built for nearly 3 decades. She first spoke them to her counselor, her voice shaking. Then, later, to the man she had promised forever to. The words were, "You cannot build trust that keeps getting broken." Imagine the weight of that. To love someone with every fiber of your being, to build a life, a family, a home. And to realize that the foundation of it all, trust, has been fractured so many times that there's nothing left but splinters. To understand that the person you love is lost in the fog of addiction, and every conversation you have is with the addiction, not with them. In that fog, you're only one of 2 things: an enabler they can manipulate, or an enemy they must lie to. There is no love in manipulation and lies. This is the raw, heartbreaking reality that opens the door to one of the most important books of our time. It's a book born from the deepest kind of pain, written by Lysa TerKeurst, called Good Boundaries and Goodbyes. This isn't just another self-help book, it's a field guide for the heart, a New York Times bestseller that has become a lifeline for millions who feel lost in the complicated, messy, and beautiful world of human relationships. And I have a promise for you. By the end of our time together today, you will understand a secret that took Lysa years of heartbreak to uncover: that boundaries are not walls we build to push people away. They are fences we build to protect the sacred ground of who we are. You will learn the difference between being a good Christian and being a doormat. And you will discover how to love others, truly and deeply, without losing the very best of who you are in the process. This isn't just about surviving your relationships, it's about learning how to make them flourish. Book summary. Have you ever felt like you were going crazy in a relationship? You know something is wrong. There's a tension in the air, a constant feeling of walking on eggshells. You've prayed about it. You've tried talking about it. You've bent over backward, changed your own behavior, and listened to all the advice. But nothing works. The same issues keep happening, over and over. And you start to wonder, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe my expectations are too high. But deep down, you can smell smoke, and you know there's a fire somewhere. Lysa TerKeurst knows this feeling intimately. She describes it like walking on a beautiful beach. You're looking forward to the soft sand, the calming waves. But then you step on a sharp sand spur. It stings. You hop around, pull it out, and walk a little more cautiously. You can still enjoy the beach. But what if the beach was filled with them? What if every few steps, another spur pricked your foot? Soon, you'd stop enjoying the walk altogether. You'd become hyper-focused on one thing, avoiding the next sting. The beach still looks beautiful from a distance, but you know the reality is painful. This is what happens in our relationships. At first, a hurtful comment or a broken promise is a single sand spur. We can overlook it. But when it becomes a pattern, the entire landscape of the relationship changes. We stop expecting peace and start bracing for pain. And here's the trap we fall into. Instead of acknowledging the pain is caused by the spurs, we start blaming ourselves for being too sensitive. We tell ourselves the problem is our feet, not the sand. We would never tell someone who stepped on a thorn that their foot was the problem, yet we do this to our own hearts all the time. This constant cycle of hope and hurt, of connection and confusion, is exhausting. And it's rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding, a tension that Lysa spent years trying to name. She finally found it in two simple words: access and responsibility. This, right here, is the key that unlocks everything. It's perhaps the single most important lesson in the entire book. Think about it this way. You have keys to your house, passwords to your bank account, and a passcode on your phone. You don't give these out to just anyone. You give them to people you trust, people who have demonstrated they will be responsible with that level of access. It would be foolish to give your house key to a stranger and just hope for the best. We understand this with our physical belongings, but we are often completely blind to this principle when it comes to our hearts. The core message of this book is a mantra you should write down and never forget. Love can be unconditional, but relational access never should be. We give people level 10 access to our hearts, our time, our emotions, and our lives, but they are only capable of showing level 3 responsibility. That gap, between the high level of access we've given and the low level of responsibility they've shown, is the source of all the chaos, frustration, and heartbreak. For years, Lysa made the mistake we all make. She tried to get the other person to increase their responsibility. She begged, she reasoned, she explained. And when they refused, she felt stuck. Powerless. But the solution isn't to change them. You can't. The solution is to take control of the one thing you can control, the level of access you grant them. Reducing their access to match their demonstrated level of responsibility isn't punishment. It's wisdom. And that, my friend, is the true definition of a boundary. A boundary is you being responsible enough to say, the way you have handled my heart shows me you are not capable of having this level of access to it right now. People who are irresponsible with our hearts should not be granted great access to our hearts. This sounds so simple, yet it feels so revolutionary. Because many of us, especially those of us who want to be kind and loving, have been taught the opposite. We've subscribed to the falsehood that setting a boundary is unchristlike, that it's selfish. But Lysa gently and powerfully dismantles this myth. She says, boundaries are not just a good idea, they're a God idea. Think back to the very beginning. In the Garden of Eden, what did God give Adam and Eve? A world full of freedom, with one clear boundary. You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Access to paradise required the responsibility of honoring one rule. When they violated that boundary, what happened? Their access was changed. Sin caused a separation. God's love for them was still there, but their access to Him and the garden was not. As humanity's sin increased throughout the Old Testament, the boundaries increased. What started as one rule in Genesis became 613 laws by the end of the Law and Prophets. The less responsibility people showed, the more boundaries were needed. This principle is woven into the fabric of creation. God even set a boundary for the sea, a symbol of chaos in biblical times. He placed a barrier of sand that the chaos was not allowed to cross. The lesson is profound. Where there is an abundance of chaos, there is usually a lack of good boundaries. So if boundaries are a God idea, and the key to healthy relationships, why are they so incredibly hard for us to implement? Why do our hands shake and our stomachs churn when we even think about having that conversation? This brings us to the deep internal work the book calls us to do. We can't just talk about boundaries, we have to understand the fears that keep us from building them. Lysa tells a deeply personal story about her childhood classroom. On the wall was a bulletin board with every student's name. Under each name were 3 cards: green, yellow, and red. The goal was to keep your green card, which meant you were a good kid, kind, responsible, respectful. If you misbehaved, the teacher would call you up to the front of the class to flip your card to yellow. A second offense meant the dreaded red card and a trip to the principal's office. For a sensitive child like Lysa, this system wasn't about learning rules, it was about a terrifying public judgment of her character. A yellow or red card didn't mean she had a bad day, it meant she was a bad person. This created a deep-seated fear of being judged wrongly. But it got more complicated. She watched as some kids would make up stories about the good kids just to see them get a yellow card. It was a game to them, but a nightmare to her. That experience planted a seed for a mindset that many of us carry into adulthood, often without realizing it. The mindset is this: other people's opinions of me define who I am. If we believe this, we become desperate to control how others see us. We become people pleasers, not just because we're nice, but because we are terrified. Our core fear when setting a boundary is not that we are being mean, it's that if we say no, someone will think poorly of us. They will misunderstand us. They will label us as selfish, controlling, or unforgiving. And if their opinion defines us, then that negative label feels like a death sentence to our identity. And so, to fight against that negative label, we drop the boundary. We would rather suffer through the chaos and disrespect than endure the pain of being misunderstood. Have you ever heard statements like these when you've tried to stand up for yourself? You're being so dramatic. It's not that big of a deal. And you call yourself a Christian? Jesus wouldn't treat people this way. I thought Christians were supposed to be forgiving. You've changed. You're not the person I used to know. You're just crazy. This is irrational. These statements are so triggering for 3 reasons. 1. They're offensive because they paint a false picture of who we are. 2. They're threatening because they imply that if we don't back down, we might lose the relationship and whatever we get from it. And 3. They're disillusioning. They make us question our own sanity. We start to wonder if the real problem is us. But here's the crucial insight Lysa offers. These triggering statements are not a sign that your boundary is wrong. They are evidence that your boundary is necessary. Unhealthy people do not like healthy boundaries. A manipulator has never met a boundary they liked. When their lack of responsibility doesn't automatically become your emergency, they get offended. They will try to make you feel guilty, punished, or unsure so that you drop the boundary and things can go back to the normal dysfunctional state they are comfortable with. On the other hand, healthy people who desire healthy relationships don't have a problem with other people's healthy boundaries. They respect your limits because they are in touch with their own. They understand that no is not a rejection of them as a person, but a responsible statement about your own capacity. So, how do we find the strength to hold a boundary when someone is pushing back with these hurtful, manipulative statements? We must do the work of untangling our identity from their opinion. Other people don't get the final say about who we are. God does. This requires asking a profound question. Who am I, really? Not who does my friend think I am, or my parent, or my spouse. Who did God create me to be? Lysa encourages us to get brutally honest here. She says that without boundaries, she can become anxious, bitter, resentful, and distant. That's not who she really is. At her core, she is kind, creative, generous, and loyal. Boundaries, therefore, don't change her into a mean person. They protect her from situations that wear her down into the worst version of herself. Boundaries help us stay true to who we really are. When we lose sight of this, it's often because a deeper fear has taken root. It's a fear that goes beyond just wanting to be liked. It's the fear that our needs will not be met. The book asks us to look at a list of needs we often bring into relationships. The need to be validated, to be in control, to be appreciated, to be chosen, to be loved. We all have these needs. They are legitimate. The problem arises when our desire for these things shifts into a demand. When we think, I want to be chosen, that's a desire. But when we think, I must be chosen by this person, or I won't be okay. That's a demand. And when we live with these demands, we become the most dangerous kind of people pleaser. We aren't just trying to make them happy. We are desperately trying to get something from them that we feel we can't live without. And this reveals the deepest, most vulnerable truth of all. The reason we get so ensnared in these unhealthy dynamics is often not about the other person at all. It's about a gap in our faith. Lysa puts it this way, and it's a statement that can stop you in your tracks. We will always desperately want from other people what we fear we will never get from God. Read that again. We fear there will be a devastating gap between what we think we need and what God will actually provide. So, we make other people our answer. We make them our source of security, our source of validation, our source of worth. And we become terrified of setting a boundary because we fear they will withdraw from us and take with them the one thing we think we need to survive. It's an inverted security that only makes us more insecure. Because people were never designed to fill the God-shaped hole in our hearts. Trying to make them do so isn't just exhausting for us, it's cruel to them. We are, in a sense, keeping them from feeling their own desperate need for God. Jesus modeled this perfectly. He served from a place of fullness, not for a feeling of fullness. He loved people enough to give them the choice to walk away. When the rich young ruler chose his wealth over following him, Jesus didn't chase him down, drop the boundary, and beg him to come back. He let him go. So, what does this look like in practice? How do we move from understanding these ideas to actually living them? The book provides a powerful, practical framework. First, a good boundary is not about controlling the other person, it's about controlling yourself. Your focus shifts from how can I make them change, to what am I willing to tolerate in my environment, and what will I do if this boundary is crossed. Second, grace has a place in this conversation. A great piece of advice from Lysa's counselor, Jim Kress, is say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. We want conflict resolution, not conflict escalation. You can start with empathy. I love you, and because I want our relationship to be healthy, we need to talk about something. Third, and this is crucial, a boundary without a real consequence will never be taken seriously. It's just a weak suggestion. If you tell a friend who is always late, I can't wait for you anymore, but then you continue to wait for them every time, your words mean nothing. The consequence might be, if you're more than 10 minutes late, I'm going to go into the movie without you. I'll save you a seat. You aren't punishing them. You are taking control of your own time and experience. You are informing them of your choice, not debating the validity of your need. But what happens when you've done all this? You've accepted reality. You've set the boundaries with grace. You've implemented the consequences. And still, the person refuses to honor them. The addictions continue. The lies persist. The disrespect doesn't stop. What happens when a relationship shifts from being difficult to being destructive? A destructive relationship, as defined by Christian counselor Leslie Vernick, involves pervasive and repetitive patterns that result in tearing someone down or inhibiting a person's growth. When this is happening, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and sometimes even for them, is to say goodbye. This is often the part we resist the most. It feels like failure. It feels mean. It feels final. But Lysa reframes this in a beautiful way. She discovered that the original phrase for goodbye in the late 1500s was "God be with ye." It was a blessing. A release. It wasn't a slammed door, it was an act of entrusting someone to God's care as you parted ways. I'd like a little more God be with you in my goodbyes. Even Jesus had to say goodbye. He watched people walk away. He was betrayed and abandoned. But the key is this. Even when people turned on him, he didn't let a goodbye turn him into someone he was never meant to be. He let people walk away without letting go of who he was. This is our goal. To acknowledge the hurt without unleashing more hurt. To admit a necessary ending without unnecessary slander. To walk away with our integrity intact. But this isn't a clean, neat process. It's a process of grief. You're not just grieving the loss of the person, you are grieving the loss of the picture you had in your mind of who you wanted them to be. The potential you saw. The future you dreamed of. That's why Lysa introduces the concept of having a million little funerals. These are private moments of closure that no one else attends. It's a process where you acknowledge what isn't, and what will never be. You give yourself permission to cry. You release the unrealistic image you've been clinging to. You accept that your desire for the relationship doesn't line up with their desire or capability. And you release them to be responsible for their life, just as you are responsible for yours. It's in these little funerals that you make space. You let go of resentment and bitterness, and you create space to receive joy, hope, and a better future. This brings us to the most difficult goodbye of all, the one at the heart of Lysa's own story. For years, she stayed and fought for her marriage through addiction and betrayal. She held on, believing her love could be enough. But she came to a devastating realization. She was living in a house undergoing a demolition, not a renovation. A renovation is a temporary setback for the sake of something more beautiful. But what was happening in her marriage wasn't construction, it was destruction. She wasn't the one breaking promises. She wasn't the one leaving the place of health they had worked so hard to get to. And in that moment of clarity, she was able to reframe her choice. It was a line that freed her, and it can free you too. I'm not giving up. I'm not walking away. I'm choosing to finally accept reality. Mental health, her counselor reminded her, is a commitment to reality at all costs. Sometimes, the reality is that a relationship is unsustainable. Sometimes, we have to accept that we have done all we can do. In the end, this journey isn't just about learning a new set of rules for relationships. It's about coming home to yourself. It's about realizing that you don't have to betray who God made you to be in order to love the people in your life. It's about understanding that a whole and healthy you is the greatest gift you can offer to the world. And that sometimes, the road to becoming fully alive is paved with good boundaries, and even a few necessary, heartbreaking, and ultimately good goodbyes. Commentary. As we close the door on this summary, I want to leave you with a few thoughts that have been sitting with me. What Lysa TerKeurst has done in Good Boundaries and Goodbyes is more than just write a book. She has given us a new language for love. For so long, many of us, especially in faith communities, have operated with a broken vocabulary. We've confused love with enabling, forgiveness with reconciliation, and self-sacrifice with self-destruction. We've been taught that being a good person means having no needs, no limits, and no right to protect ourselves from harm. And this broken language has led to broken hearts and broken relationships. This book is a dictionary for a healthier way of loving. It gives us permission to be human, to have limits, to feel pain, and to say, "This is not okay." It teaches us that the most loving thing we can do is often the thing that feels the hardest. To hold people accountable for their actions, not by trying to control them, but by controlling the access we give them. In a world that is increasingly chaotic and polarized, where relationships often feel fragile and fraught with tension, this message is more vital than ever. It's a guide for navigating not just the big, dramatic betrayals, but the everyday frictions that wear us down. The friend who always takes and never gives, the family member whose negativity drains the life out of you, the boss who has no respect for your time. The most powerful lesson for me is the shift in perspective from external control to internal responsibility. For years, I think we've been asking the wrong question. We ask, how can I get them to change? This book teaches us to ask, how can I stay true to who I am, regardless of what they choose to do? That is a question that returns power, dignity, and sanity to us. It frees us from the exhausting and impossible task of managing another person's life and calls us to the worthy and possible task of stewarding our own. So, how can you start applying this today? I'd suggest 3 small steps. First, just for yourself, identify one relationship in your life where there might be a mismatch between the level of access you've given and the level of responsibility the other person has shown. You don't have to do anything about it yet. Just name it. Awareness is the first step. Second, practice one small low-stakes boundary this week. It could be with a friend, a coworker, or a family member. Maybe it's simply saying, "I'd love to help with that, but I can't do it today. I can on Friday," or "I only have about 10 minutes to talk right now." Notice how it feels to state your limit calmly and kindly, without over-explaining or apologizing. Third, take a quiet moment and answer the question from the book, "Who am I?" Write down 3 qualities that are true of you at your very best, independent of anyone else's opinion. Maybe you are compassionate, resilient, or creative. Let that be your anchor. Remind yourself that a boundary isn't a rejection of love, it's a protection of the person God made you to be, so that you can love others from that place of strength. That was a summary of Good Boundaries and Goodbyes by Lysa TerKeurst. We've walked through the key ideas today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the landmarks and the main roads, but it can never replace the feeling of actually walking the paths, smelling the air, and letting the journey change you. The real magic happens when you read the book for yourself. It's in those quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with your own life in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has echoed in your heart, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning new information, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself, your relationships, and the very nature of love. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, please do us a favor and hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.